June 4th, 1942. The vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, midway between the Hawaiian Islands and the Japanese homeland. Dawn's first light filters through a thin veil of clouds, casting long shadows across the deck of the USS Enterprise. The air carrier hums with restrained urgency, diesel engines throbbing below decks, the sharp tang of aviation fuel mingling with the salty bite of sea spray. You can almost feel the deck plates vibrating under your boots as pilots scramble toward their dauntless dive bombers, yellow-vested ordnance crews wheeling 500-pound bombs into position. In the distance, the silhouettes of other carriers, Yorktown Hornet, cut through the swells like steel behemoths, their wakes churning white foam. Captain Miles Browning stands on the bridge, his binoculars pressed to his eyes, scanning the horizon. The executive officer of the Enterprise, a sharp-minded tactician with a reputation for bold calls, grips the rail tightly. His uniform is crisp despite the humidity, but sweat beads on his forehead, not from the heat, but from the weight of what's unfolding. Radar blips had flickered to life hours ago, faint echoes of an approaching storm. The Imperial Japanese Navy's strike force, led by the mighty carriers Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, Admiral Nagumo's armada, 200 miles northwest, poised to crush the American fleet and seize Midway Atoll as a stepping stone to Hawaii. Below, Lieutenant Commander Clarence McCluskey paces the ready room, his squadron leaders gathered around a chart table littered with coffee-stained maps. The room smells of stale smoke and nervous energy. A radio man hunches over a crackling receiver. Static bursts interrupting fragmented Japanese transmissions intercepted by codebreakers back at Pearl Harbor. "They're rearming," the radio man mutters, his voice barely above the hum of fluorescent lights. "Torpedo planes for the second wave, but fighters launching now." Browning interrupts from the intercom, his tone clipped and commanding. "Scout planes report enemy carriers turning into the wind. Dive bombers launch on my mark. Find them, hit them hard." The words hang in the air like a fuse lit. McCluskey nods to his men, young faces, some barely out of their teens, eyes hardened by months of patrols since Pearl Harbor. They strap on their flight helmets, the leather creaking, and file out toward the elevators. Imagine the roar as the first SBD Dauntless is hoisted to the flight deck, propellers spinning up, the right cyclone engine coughing to life with a guttural bellow that drowns out the waves crashing against the hull. As the squadrons take off, 16 planes from Enterprise's Bombing 6 and Scouting 6, plus 8 from Yorktown, the sky fills with the drone of radials, a swarm of black dots climbing into the overcast. McCluskey leads from his cockpit, the stick slick in his gloved hands, altimeter ticking upward to 15,000 feet. The formation spreads out in a search pattern, each pilot straining against the G-forces, oxygen masks fogging slightly from their breath. Below, the ocean is an endless blue void, dotted with whitecaps. Above, cumulus clouds billow like smoke from an unseen fire. Back on the Enterprise, Admiral Raymond Spruance confers with Captain George Murray in the flag plot, a dimly lit compartment alive with the tick of teletype machines and the scratch of pencils on plexiglass overlays. Spruance, the unassuming commander of Task Force 16, sips black coffee from a tin mug, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos reports filtering in. "Nagumo's planes are airborne," Murray says, pointing to a plotted vector. "Our scouts confirm 4 carriers, screened by battleships and cruisers. If we miss this window..." He trails off, the implication clear. The Japanese combined fleet outnumbers them 2-1 in carriers. Their Zero fighters legendary for chewing through American Wildcats. The tension coils tighter as minutes tick by. On the bridge, lookouts shout sightings. Porpoises breaching, a distant squall. But no enemy. Browning paces, stopwatch in hand, calculating fuel burn rates. 8 minutes. That's all they have before the Japanese scouts spot the Americans and turn the tide. In the ready room, spare pilots wait, fingers drumming on knees, listening to the radio chiptune with enemy chatter. A sudden burst. Torio! Enemy fleet sighted! Japanese for dragon! Their code for carriers. Hearts pound. Is it us they've found? High above, McCluskey's voice crackles over the circuit. No joy on the primary vector. Turning north. Fuel critical. His planes fan out. Engines straining against the headwind. The sun now glaring off the waves below. One by one, they pierce the clouds, eyes peeled for the telltale smoke trails of enemy exhaust. The altimeter drops as they descend to wave-top height, skimming salt spray that stings exposed skin. Imagine the isolation, no land in sight, just the endless Pacific, the weight of revenge for Pearl Harbor pressing down. Suddenly a glint on the horizon, mast tops, then the angular forms of flat tops. Kaga and Akagi, their decks swarming with planes being rearmed for a strike on Midway. McCluskey's heart races. He keys the mic. Sighting confirmed. Commencing attack. The dive bombers pull up sharply, wings slicing the sky as anti-aircraft fire erupts from the Japanese cruisers, 5-inch guns barking, tracers arcing like fiery comets. But not all is smooth. Hornet's squadron, led by Commander Walter Rhodey, has veered off course, lost in the clouds. Yorktown's planes, under Lieutenant Wally Gallagher, push forward alone. Browning on the Enterprise bridge mutters a curse, slamming his fist on the chart table. Spruance remains stoic, but his eyes betray the calculation. 8 minutes to decision. Launch the torpedoes now, or hold for the dive bombers? The radio squawks with reports. Devastator torpedo planes from Torpedo Squadron 8 streaking low, Zero fighters pouncing like hawks. Ensign George Gay, sole survivor of VT-8, feels the deck shudder as his TBD Devastator skips across the waves, 100-knot winds buffeting the open cockpit. Bullets whine past, shredding fabric. His gunner slumps lifeless. "I'm hit!" Gay yells into the wind, but presses on, dropping his Mark 13 torpedo at point-blank range. It broaches, useless. Zeros swarm, cannons chattering, his plane erupts in flames, but he ditches into the sea, clinging to wreckage amid the debris of 14 fallen comrades. The bridge of the Enterprise falls silent as the reports flood in. Torpedo Squadron decimated. No hits. Spruance turns to Browning, the clock inexorably ticking. The Japanese carriers are exposed, their CAP, Combat Air Patrol, drawn low to chase the torpedoes. Dive bombers inbound, but scattered. 8 minutes, that's the razor-thin margin between annihilation and victory. Do they recall the planes to conserve fuel or commit everything in a desperate plunge? As the first Dauntlesses scream into their dives, sirens wailing like banshees, the fate of the Pacific hangs in the balance. You can hear the explosions now, distant thunder rolling across the waves, black smoke rising like omens. If you're gripped by these turning points of history, subscribe to the channel for more. But the real drama unfolds in those fleeting moments, Spruance's hand hovering over the order that could rewrite the war. The plunge into hell. The wail of dive sirens pierces the morning sky like the cries of doomed souls. A sound that chills even the hardest hearts aboard the USS Enterprise. It's 10:22 a.m., June 4th, 1942, and Lieutenant Commander Clarence McCluskey's dauntless squadron has broken through the clouds at last, their shadows flickering across the decks of the Japanese carriers Kaga and Akagi far below. The Pacific swells gently under the enemy formation, but up here at 18,000 feet, the air is thin and biting, oxygen masks hissing rhythmically against the pilots' faces. McCluskey banks left, his SBD's perforated dive brakes snapping open with a metallic groan, the stick bucking in his grip as gravity takes hold. "This is it, boys," he transmits, voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through his veins. "Pick your targets and roll in." From the Enterprise's bridge, Captain Miles Browning watches the drama unfold through binoculars. The distant specks of American planes spiraling downward like falling leaves in a gale. The radio crackles with fragmented updates. Akagi in my sights. Flak. Heavy. The Japanese anti-aircraft barrage erupts in response, a forest of black puffs blooming around the divers, 25mm Type 96 guns, from the screening destroyers chattering furiously. Tracers streak upward in crimson lines, forcing pilots to weave mid-dive. You can picture it, the cockpit shaking violently, wind howling through the open canopy, the altimeter spinning wildly from 15,000 to 10,000 feet in seconds. Lieutenant Richard Best, McCluskey's wingman from Bombing 6, feels the G-forces press him into his seat, sweat stinging his eyes as he lines up on Akagi's forward deck, where Zeros are being fueled and armed for their next strike. Below, on Akagi's flight deck, chaos reigns. Crewmen in khaki uniforms scramble amid the clutter of ordnance carts. 550-pound Type 99 bombs stacked perilously close to fueling hoses. Captain Kichi Hasegawa shouts orders from the bridge, his face a mask of controlled fury, as the carrier turns sharply into the wind to launch more fighters. The air reeks of high-octane gasoline and cordite. Deckhands haul away a half-rearmed Kate torpedo bomber just as the first Dauntless appears overhead, a dark angel of vengeance. Best releases his bomb at 500 feet, the 1,000-pounder tumbling free with a whistle. It strikes true, punching through the wooden deck and detonating in the hangar below, igniting fuel lines in a cataclysmic fireball. Orange flames leap skyward, swallowing planes and men alike. The explosions roar, carrying across the waves like a thunderclap. Akagi lists to port, secondary blasts rippling through her vitals, ammunition magazines cooking off in chain reactions that shred bulkheads and hurl debris into the sea. Screams echo from the inferno, but the crew fights on, hoses snaking across the deck in futile sprays of water. Nearby, Soryu takes a hit from Lieutenant Wallace Gallagher's Yorktown squadron, her after-elevator jammed open, inviting another bomb straight into the heart of her engine rooms. Black smoke billows, obscuring the rising sun insignia on her island as her speed drops to a crawl. The cruiser tone, screening the carriers, unleashes her 8-inch guns, shells whistling harmlessly past the diving Americans, but a lucky burst from a zero-clips Ensign Clay Fisher, sending his Dauntless into a flat spin toward the ocean. Back on the Enterprise, the flag plot is a hive of tension. Admiral Raymond Spruance stands motionless before the plotting board, his fingers tracing the enemy positions marked in grease pencil. 4 carriers now, Hiryu still untouched, but her sisters crippled. Captain George Murray leans in, voice low. Torpedo runs bought us time. Their cap is scattered low, chasing shadows, but McCluskey's down to minutes. Fuel states are redlining. The clock on the bulkhead reads 10:24. 2 minutes gone. Browning bursts into the compartment, uniform disheveled, eyes wild. "Sir, the dives are hitting home. Akagi's a pyre. But Hornet's birds are still lost. If we don't cover the retreat." He gestures to the radar scope, where faint blips show Japanese scouts circling closer, their Aichi D3A Vals probing for the American task force. Spruance nods, his mind a whirlwind of calculations. The Battle of Midway teeters on this knife edge. Commit the reserve fighters now, stripping the Enterprise bare, or hold them to defend against Nagumo's inevitable counterstrike. 8 minutes. That's the window code breakers predicted for the Japanese rearmament, the fragile span before their decks turn lethal again. Reports flood in. Kaga hit multiple times, fires out of control. Lieutenant Edgar Stebbins' bomb has cratered her flight deck, trapping fueled fighters in a death trap. The carrier heels over, her crew abandoning anti-fire drills to leap into the sea, life jackets blooming like white flowers on the waves. From your vantage on the bridge, the horizon shimmers with heat haze and smoke, the acrid scent of burning oil drifting on the breeze. But victory feels fragile. Ensign Stanley Waddle from Scouting 6 pulls out of his dive too shallow, raking Akagi with his forward 50 caliber guns before a flak shard shreds his tail. He crashes into the carrier's side, the impact a dull boom that scatters shrapnel across the deck. Japanese damage control parties swarm, but it's too late. Akagi's captain signals the flagship, "Abandon ship." Nagumo, aboard the cruiser Nagara, after Akagi's fall, clenches his fists, ordering Hiryu to launch every Zero she has. His voice over the radio is iron. "Counterattack the enemy carriers. Avenge our brothers." On the Enterprise, the radio man's voice cuts through. "McCluskey RTB, fuel critical, but 3 carriers down." Cheers erupt briefly in the CIC, but Spruance silences them with a raised hand. 4 minutes elapsed. Browning presses. "Launch the reserves, Admiral. Wildcats from VF6 can escort the bombers home and tangle with their cap." Spruance's eyes narrow, weighing the intangibles. The human cost, the fog of war. Recall the planes and risk Japanese scouts pinpointing Task Force 16, or surge forward and expose everything. The teletype clatters with intercepts. Hiryu's Vals and Kate's warming up, props spinning on her deck. You sense the weight in that pause, the salt, stiff air, thick with unspoken dread. Pilots like McCluskey, nursing perforated tanks, limp homeward, nursing wounds and miracles. Below decks, ordnance crews reload the catapults, hearts pounding to the rhythm of the engines. Spruance turns to the talker, his decision forming like a storm cloud. But as Hiryu's first strike lifts off, 16 planes strong, vectored toward the Americans, the Admiral knows the 8 minutes are burning away, each second a gamble with empires. The counterpunch is coming, and Midway's fate rides on what happens next. The shadows close in. Admiral Raymond Spruance stands frozen in the flag plot of the USS Enterprise, the humid air thick with the scent of sweat-soaked charts and machine oil. It's 10:26 a.m., June 4th, 1942, and the bulkhead clock's second hand sweeps relentlessly, marking the 5th minute of the 8-minute abyss, the fleeting vulnerability of Nagumo's fleet after the torpedo decoys pulled their fighters low. Outside, the Pacific whispers against the hull, a deceptive calm, broken only by the distant rumble of dying fires on the horizon, where Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu belch black plumes that stain the sky like accusations. Spruance's fingers drum once on the edge of the plotting table, his grey eyes flicking to the grease-pencil tracks. Hiryu, the last Japanese carrier standing, steaming south at 25 knots, her deck alive with the growl of starting engines. Captain Miles Browning bursts through the hatch again, his face flushed under the bridge's red lighting, salt crystals crusting his eyebrows from the spray. "Admiral, intercepts confirm it. Hiryu's launching. Val's and Kate's, at least a dozen, vectored on our position. McCluskey's birds are straggling back, low on fuel and ammo, but they've gutted 3 flat tops." His voice cracks with urgency, gesturing to the radar operator hunched over the CX-AM set, its green glow illuminating blips like fireflies in the night. The room pulses with the throb of the ship's screws, teletype keys clacking out fragments from Station Hypo. "Enemy Air Group airborne. ETA to Task Force 16. 20 minutes. 20 minutes to brace for hell, but only 3 left in the window before Hiryu's rearmament cycle completes, turning her into a hornet's nest. Spruance absorbs it all without a flinch, his mind a tactical abacus spinning variables. The Enterprise and Hornet exposed, Yorktown already nursing wounds from an earlier scout skirmish. Below decks, the hangar deck echoes with the clang of arresting gear and the shouts of mechanics swarming returning Dauntlesses, perforated wings patched with hasty tape, 500-pound bomb shackles empty but screaming for reloads. Lieutenant Richard Best, nursing a grazed shoulder from flak, stumbles into the ready room, his flight suit charred at the cuffs. "We got him, sir!" he gasps to the waiting pilots, collapsing into a chair as corpsmen swarm him. But the elation fades fast. A radioman relays Ensign George Gay's faint Morse from his raft. Alone, zeros everywhere, holding on. The torpedo squadron's sacrifice hangs heavy. 14 planes lost to buy this moment. On the bridge, Captain George Murray grips the voice tube, his knuckles white. Sir, recommend launching VF-6 reserves, 16 Wildcats under Butch O'Hare. They can intercept Hiryu's strike before it reaches us. The words slice the tension, but Spruance hesitates, glancing at the wind chart pinned nearby. 15 knots from the northeast. Perfect for flight ops, but whipping smoke from the Japanese wrecks into veils that could blind scouts. You feel the deck tilt slightly as the carrier turns into the breeze, elevators whining as they rise with fresh ordnance. Browning paces, his polished shoes scuffing the linoleum. If we hold back, Admiral, Hiryu recovers. Nagumo regroups with his battleships. Yamato's guns could pound Midway to dust. 8 minutes was our shot. We've burned 5 chasing ghosts. The Admiral's response is measured, his West Point cadence cutting through the hum of ventilators. And if we strip our cap, what defends against their scouts? We've got Wildcats aloft, but fuel states are marginal. Hornet's squadron never found the target. He turns to the talker, a young ensign with a headset clamped over his ears, whose face pales at the incoming squawk. Yorktown reports enemy planes bearing 320, closing fast. Panic ripples. Yorktown, steaming 10 miles east, is the bait now, her radars picking up the first tendrils of Hiryu's counterpunch. Lieutenant Wally Gallagher's surviving pilots, wings folded in her hangar, scramble anew. But her deck is a magnet for the Vals, silky dive bombers with 550-pound bombs slung under their bellies, escorted by Zeros whose 20mm cannons have already claimed dozens. Far to the northwest, aboard Hiryu, Captain Tomio Kaku stands resolute on the bridge, the carrier slicing through swells as her flight deck clears. The air vibrates with the snarl of Nakajima B-5N Kates taxiing forward, their radial engines belching blue exhaust, pilots like Lieutenant Michio Kobayashi scanning the horizon through cockpits glazed with humidity. Nagumo's orders crackle over the circuit from Nagara. Sink the American carriers, strike without mercy. Crewmen secure the last Type 91 torpedoes, the metallic tang of lubricant sharp in the breeze, unaware that their sisters burn just miles away. A Zero lifts off first, its sleek form banking gracefully, joining the formation of 15 aircraft that arrow southeast, the sun glinting off their fuselages like drawn blades. Back on Enterprise, the decision crystallizes in Spruance's stare at the clock, 6 minutes gone. He nods to Murray. Launch the reserves. Alert Hornet and Yorktown form a defensive weave and get McCluskey's stragglers vectored home. The order unleashes motion, klaxons blare below, pilots bolting from bunks, helmets under arms. Ensign Stanley Johnston sprints to his F4F Wildcat, the prop wash tugging at his scarf as the deck crew signals ready. The catapult officer yanks the lever. A thunderous whoosh hurls the fighter airborne, tires smoking on the deck before lifting into the overcast. 16 more follow in pairs, their 50 caliber belts topped off, climbing to 10 Zedran feet, where clouds part to reveal the vast blue battlefield. But the cost mounts. A scout from Tone spots Task Force 16's smoke trails, radioing coordinates that seal the hunt. On Yorktown, Captain Elliot Buckmaster sounds general quarters, 5-inch 38 guns training skyward as the first Vals materialize, silhouettes detaching from the sun like vultures. Anti-aircraft fire stitches the air, pom-poms chugging orange tracers that force a Kate to peel off, trailing fuel. Yet one slips through, its bomb glancing off the flight deck, igniting a fire that races toward the hangar. Explosions rock the carrier, her island superstructure crumpling under a direct hit, sending shards of steel whistling into the sea. Crewmen in asbestos suits battle the blaze, but Yorktown slows, listing her fate teetering. Spruance watches the reports flood in, the plot board updating with frantic strokes. Yorktown hit, hear you still launching. 7 minutes elapsed. Browning whispers, "We bought time, but at what price?" The Admiral's hand steadies on the rail, the wind carrying faint echoes of gunfire from the east. The Wildcats race to intercept, but Hiryu's swarm is closing, and the 8th minute looms, a threshold where hesitation could doom them all. In that suspended breath, you hear the engines roar, merging with the waves, the Pacific holding its verdict. The fires of retribution, the sky over the Pacific fractures with the staccato bursts of machine guns, a deadly ballet unfolding at 12, Suzerain feet as Ensign Stanley Johnston's F-4F Wildcat Squadron from USS Enterprise tears into Hiryu's incoming strike force. It's 10:28 a.m., June 4th, 1942, and the 7th minute of the 8-minute window slips away like sand through clenched fists. The air alive with the acrid bite of cordite and the metallic tang of spent shells. Johnston banks hard right, his Grumman fighter shuddering under the torque, the 50 caliber Brownings in his wings hammering out a stream of lead that rakes a Nakajima B-5N Kate torpedo bomber. The Japanese plane erupts in a spray of fuel and fabric, spiraling toward the sea in a corkscrew of black smoke. Its pilot, Lieutenant Michio Kobayashi, ejecting too late, his parachute fouling in the flames. From the Enterprise's Combat Information Center, Admiral Raymond Spruance leans over the voice tube, his voice a calm anchor amid the storm of reports. "Vector the Wildcats to Yorktown's bearing. Intercept now." The order ripples through the ship, claxons wailing below decks where damage control teams brace for impacts, their boots pounding steel gratings slick with oil. Captain Miles Browning, back on the bridge, scans the horizon through salt-crusted binoculars, the distant silhouette of USS Yorktown wreathed in smoke, her 5-inch guns thundering defiance. You can almost taste the salt spray whipping across the flight deck, mingling with the exhaust from idling Dauntlesses, as deck crews hustle to rearm returning bombers, 3-7-pounders hoisted by chainfulls with grinding clanks. High above, the dogfight intensifies. Zeros from Hiryu's Combat Air Patrol, sleek A6M2s with their 20mm cannons, diving like falcons on the American interceptors. Lieutenant Commander John Thatch, leading a composite group from Hornet's VF-8, rolls into a defensive weave, his Wildcat's engine roaring as he evades a burst that shatters his canopy glass. Shards fly, nicking his cheek, but he counters with a tight turn, his beam guns stitching the Zero's belly. The enemy fighter disintegrates mid-air, debris raining down like confetti from hell, but not before its wingman claims Lieutenant Alex Vrasiu's plane, sending it into a plume of fire that lights the clouds from within. "Splash one!" Thatch transmits, his voice ragged over the static, but the cost is etched in every blip vanishing from the radar scopes back aboard Enterprise. On Yorktown, Captain Elliot Buckmaster fights to keep his carrier in the fight. The deck heaving as another Val dive bomber, slipping the Wildcat screen, releases its 550-pound bomb at 2 feet. The projectile whistles down, exploding amidships and ripping open the hangar deck, igniting fueled TBD devastators in a chain of secondary blasts that hurl twisted metal skyward. Flames lick the bulkheads, the heat blistering paint and flesh alike. Sailors in fire suits charge forward, axes swinging to clear debris, their shouts drowned by the roar. Buckmaster, bloodied from flying splinters, grips the annunciator. "Flood the magazines! Abandon forward sections!" The carrier slows to 10 knots, listing 5 degrees. Her radar antenna mangled, but her AA batteries keep firing. Pom-poms chugging rounds that force a Kate to jettison its torpedo early, the weapon splashing harmlessly into the swells. Spruance absorbs the carnage in the CIC, the plotting board a chaotic scrawl of vectors. Hiryu's strike down to 8 planes. But Yorktown crippled, her air group scattered. The clock hits 10:29, the 8th minute dawning, the window closing like a trap. Browning enters, his face ashen, clutching a flimsy with fresh intercepts. Admiral Hiryu's rearming complete. Nagumo's pulling south, but our scouts have her position. McCluskey's ready for another go. Bombing 6 has 10 birds armed with 500-pounders. The room falls silent, save for the hum of blowers and the scratch of pencils updating tracks. Spruance's mind races through the calculus. Pursue Hiryu now, risking the task force to her counterstrikes, or consolidate and let the damaged Yorktown limp home. The human toll presses in, pilots like Ensign George Gay bobbing alone on rafts, Yorktown's crew battling inferno, the ghosts of Torpedo 8 urging vengeance. You feel the deck's subtle pitch as Enterprise turns into the wind, elevators rising with fresh dauntlesses, their props feathering in anticipation. Lieutenant Richard Best, bandaged but insistent, straps into his cockpit, the leather seat warm from the sun. "For the Yorktown," he mutters, throttle advancing with a throaty growl. Spruance straightens, his decision forged in that heartbeat. Launch the second strike. McCluskey leads. Target Hiryu. Alert Hornet. Provide cover. The words unleash the beast. Catapult steam, planes hurtling forward in explosive bursts, tires screeching before wings bite the air. 16 SBDs claw skyward, joined by 8 Wildcats, the formation coalescing like a spear aimed at the Japanese survivor. Aboard Hiryu, Captain Tomeo Kaku senses the shift, his bridge crew scanning the skies as reports of the failed strike filter in. Only 4 planes returning, riddled with holes. The carrier's deck, still cluttered from the launch, clears hastily, Zeros scrambling aloft to reform the cap. Nagumo, transferred to the light cruiser Nagara, paces her deck, binoculars trained east. The Americans press, prepare for defense, but the sea betrays them. A PBY Catalina scout from Midway circles unseen, relaying coordinates that guide McCluskey's bombers unerringly. The Wildcats tangle with Hiryu's escorts first, bullets zipping through the overcast at 300 miles per hour. Johnston downs a Zero with a deflection shot, its pilot bailing out into the drink, but takes 7mm rounds in his oil cooler, smoke trailing as he fights to stay airborne. Below, the Dauntlesses pierce the clouds at 15, 0 feet, McCluskey's voice steady. "Sighting Hiryu, dive on my mark." The sirens wail again, a dirge for the last Japanese hope, as anti-aircraft fire from screening cruisers, Chikuma and Tone, erupts in angry puffs. Bombs whistle down, one cratering Hiryu's flight deck, another slamming her island, flames erupting amid fueled aircraft. Yorktown takes a third hit meanwhile. A torpedo from a surviving Kate shearing her rudder, the carrier dead in the water, pumps laboring against flooding. Buckmaster orders abandon ship, lifeboats swinging out as tugs from the task force close in. Spruance watches from Enterprise. The decisions echo reverberating. 8 minutes gambled, 3 carriers sunk, but Hiryu wounded. The battle's tide turned. Yet as McCluskey's planes pull out, low on fuel, a final Zero swarm rises from the horizon. Nagumo's desperate riposte. The Pacific churns with blood and oil, victory within grasp. But the war's fury unrelenting, demanding one last push. The last stand. The sun hangs high over the Pacific, its glare turning the oil-slicked waves into a shimmering graveyard by 10:45 a.m. on June 4, 1942, as Lieutenant Commander Clarence McCluskey's second strike wave from USS Enterprise bores in on the beleaguered Hiryu. The carrier's deck, scarred from the first bomb hits, tilts under evasive maneuvers, her anti-aircraft batteries, 25-meter Type 96 machine guns, and 5-inch dual-purpose mounts, belching fury in a curtain of steel that litters the sky with jagged bursts. McCluskey's SBD Dauntless leads the dive, the perforated brakes whining open at 17,000 feet, the stick fighting his grip as the altimeter plummets. Below, the Japanese formation scatters, cruisers Chikuma and Tone weaving desperately, their 8-inch guns thundering shells that splash harmlessly short, sending geysers towering like watery tombstones. From Enterprise's bridge, Admiral Raymond Spruance tracks the assault through the Talker's urgent relays, the CIC's fluorescent hum, underscoring the gravity of his 8-minute gamble, now cresting into its final throes. Captain Miles Browning stands beside him, binoculars trembling slightly in his hands, the horizon alive with the black pyres of Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu. Hulks adrift, their crews abandoning in droves, life rafts dotting the swells like scattered confetti. "McCluskey's rolling in. Hiryu's island is bracketed," the radio man reports, static crackling like distant lightning. You can feel the deck's vibration intensify as Enterprise maintains 25 knots, her Wildcat escorts from VF-6 circling protectively overhead, engines droning a vigilant chorus against the fading threat of Japanese scouts. Aboard Hiryu, Captain Tomeo Kaku grips the rail on the carrier's bridge, his uniform singed from near misses, the air thick with the stench of burning rubber and aviation fuel. The flight deck below is a charnel house. Fueled A6M-0s clustered amidships erupt in secondary explosions as Lieutenant Richard Best's 1.00-pound bomb punches through the wooden planking, detonating in the hangar and igniting ready ammunition. Flames whoosh upward in a 200-foot inferno, swallowing deckhands who scramble for the rails, their screams lost in the roar. A second hit from Ensign Wig Johannesson craters the forward elevator, jamming it open and inviting chaos into the vitals, bulkheads buckling, steam hissing from ruptured lines. Kaku shouts into the voice tube. "Damage control to stations, flood the magazines." But it's futile. The carrier slows to 15 knots, listing 10 degrees, her speed bleeding away as fires rage unchecked. High above, the dogfight rages on, Ensign Stanley Johnston's Wildcat twisting through a swarm of surviving Zeros, his .50 caliber guns barking in short bursts that shear a wing from an A6M2. The enemy plane cartwheels into the sea, a white splash marking its end, but Johnston takes return fire. 7mm rounds stitching his fuselage, smoke wisping from his cowling. "Evasive, climb to Angel 6, Lieutenant Commander John Thatch vectors from Hornet, his own F-4F scarred but airborne, weaving the beam defense tactic that claims 2 more Zeros in a tangle of smoke trails. Below, McCluskey pulls out of his dive at 500 feet, the Dauntless shuddering from flak impacts, his rear gunner manning the twin 30 calibers to ward off a trailing Val. The formation reforms raggedly, fuel gauges flickering red, but the deed is done. Hiryu, mortally wounded, her counterstrike reduced to ghosts. Back on Enterprise, the reports cascade in like a torrent. Hiryu afire, multiple hits confirmed, she's launching no more. Spruance exhales slowly, the weight of the decision lifting fractionally as Captain George Murray updates the plot board, erasing enemy blips with deliberate strokes. The clock reads 10:47. The 8 minutes have expired, but their echo reshapes the ocean. Browning slaps the rail, a rare grin cracking his stern facade. "We turned it, Admiral. Nagumo's fleet is blind, 4 carriers gone in one morning. Yet triumph tastes bittersweet. Scouts relay Yorktown's final throws 20 miles east, her hull awash after the 3rd torpedo strike, Captain Elliot Buckmaster's voice faint over the circuit. Abandoning ship, sinking by the bow. Destroyers Hammond and Balch close in, their crews hauling survivors from the water. The sea churning with debris and oil that clings like black tar to the living. Nagumo, aboard the cruiser Nagara, receives the death knell via frantic radio bursts from Hiryu's bridge. Unable to control fires. Abandoning. His face hardens, the architect of Pearl Harbor now facing reversal, ordering the combined fleet to withdraw northwest under cover of smoke screens from screening destroyers. Yamato, the behemoth battleship with her 18, 1-inch guns silent today, turns ponderously away, her wake a white scar on the blue. Japanese pilots, those few returning from aborted strikes, ditch alongside the fleet, parachutes blooming amid the swells as picket vessels fish them out. The loss sinks in. 248 aircraft expended, elite aircrews vanished, the IJN's carrier force halved in hours. As McCluskey's planes limp homeward, engines coughing on fumes, Enterprise's deck crews prepare for recovery. Arresting wires tensioned, crash barriers raised. The first Dauntless touches down with a screech of tires and a billow of smoke, Hook snagging the wire as the pilot chops the throttle. Applause ripples from the hangar observers, but it's subdued. Corpsmen rush to patch wounds. Medics treating burns and shrapnel gashes under the harsh deck lights. Lieutenant Best taxis to a stop, climbing out unsteadily, his eyes hollow from the dives. "For everyone we lost," he tells a gathered pilot, voice raw, "we took 10. Ensign George Gay, rescued at last by a PBY from Midway, clings to his raft's edge miles away, whispering thanks to the empty sky as a destroyer hails him aboard. Spruance steps onto the open bridge, the breeze carrying the faint, oily reek of victory. He surveys the task force, Enterprise and Hornet intact, their decks a hive of activity, but Yorktown's absence a void. The decision, those 8 minutes of calculated risk, has shattered Nagumo's invasion, securing Midway Atoll and halting Japan's Pacific thrust. No more stepping stones to Hawaii. The tide shifts toward Guadalcanal, island-hopping campaigns that will bleed the empire dry. Yet the human ledger tolls heavy. 307 Japanese sailors and airmen dead on the carriers, 150 Americans lost, including Yorktown's 141 souls. Spruance murmurs to Murray, "We paid in blood, but the war turns here." Dusk falls slowly, the sun dipping behind clouds heavy with rain, washing the decks clean. Submarines prowl the perimeter, ensuring the retreat, while codebreakers at Pearl Harbor tally the intercepts that sealed the day. The Pacific, vast and unforgiving, cradles its secrets, the wreckage of empires, the spark of Allied resurgence. In the quiet after the storm, you hear only the waves lapping, a testament to choices made under fire, forever altering the arc of history.